Okay, so this week's prompt was discuss situations in which you have employed the various sources of power and influence. Work to tie those experiences to your role as a leader or follower, and also discuss ways cultural differences may influence the way we interact with leaders and employ power. So, well, it says in the book that leaders should rely more heavily on expert and referent power to be like most effective. And I think like with my job, the kind of power I see displayed more regularly is referent power, just because like there's a high value like placed on relationships between leaders and followers of like every different level. And also like whenever go into a promotion or when someone gets hired on, they give a whole bunch of like inspirational stories and they like give you like role models within the company. Like my job right now, they're training me to become a leader right now. So they assign me with people that are below me for me to be like their role model and their mentor and their leader. So I think just I mean, that's also kind of the type of power they want you to do is like referent power, but they also have just like legitimate power. They assign that, but they kind of use those hand in hand with people on a regular basis at my job anyway.
Yeah, I think like at Starbucks, reading all of these. I think I use all of them. Kind of some of them more than others, obviously, but I think the two that come to my mind are expert power, because I've worked at Starbucks for a very long time. I think like 4 years, and so a lot of the people that I'm supposed to be leading, and I've worked in the same store for a long time too. A lot of the people that I'm supposed to be leading kind of know that I know what I'm doing, and I've been here for a very long time, so they're quite likely to follow me. Um, and then the example of referent power that came to my mind was this was a couple months ago when I was supposed to close, and um, one of the baristas who was supposed to close with me called out, like they called out sick, and then so I was texting people, and like there's this one kid that for some reason, I don't know why, he just absolutely loves me. And so he was like way more than happy to cover the person's shift, even though it was a closing shift, which people don't usually like just to help me out. And then I tried to use that again a week later when one of my another shift supervisor's baristas called out, and then I asked him if he wanted to cover the closing shift, and then he was like all for it, even though he wasn't going to work with me, but he wanted to, because I guess I was the one that asked him, and he and I get along pretty well. That was kind of one where I was like, oh, I had this power because he kind of admired me, type thing. Although I definitely do use obviously legitimate power just because I am the supervisor, and then the reward power I guess I use sometimes when someone wants to be in a new spot or get out of a certain spot. And then I will say something along the lines of, "Hey, well, if you hang in here a little longer, then I'll put you on bar or something. Or if you clean the drains or something, then I'll allow you to be on bar or something like that." So a lot of times I use just some blend of those, like on a daily basis. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I was a shift leader at Dairy Queen when I was like 18. That's the only time I've kind of been like that was like legitimate power because they like gave me that position. But most of the time I guess I'd been like a follower. So I was trying to like see what kind of like leaders I've had, like what as a follower, like what kind of power have they used. And I've definitely had a lot of like coercive power, like where like the kind of the boss that I always mention, like that I mentioned last time too, would like use that kind of like would like threaten to take away my raise or like cut my hours. Like if you got on his bad side, like the next week you would expect to only have a couple shifts, but if like you did really good and he was like really, he would do reward kind of coercive power. But yeah, I'm trying to think, like, I guess when I was a shift leader, I did use like different, because you kind of have to use like different elements of every, but I would say the most I did was kind of like legitimate, like the people just listened to me because they knew I was the shift leader, and they were all like 15-year-olds and I was like the older one anyway, so yeah.
I guess I'm kind of the same as far as I've used every one of these powers just to get my job done. So there's two sides to what I do. There's a company-owned store, and then we have stores that are within other companies. We call them licensed stores. So I've worked on both sides of the company, but I'm in the licensed side of the business right now. So these businesses, like Target has a Starbucks inside there. So in order for me to get my job done, I pretty much have to use all of these powers because these people don't actually work for me. And so, I mean, there's like, I think about reward power. We, it could be the smallest thing is giving somebody a card to recognize customer service behaviors or other good behaviors that we want them to continue. I think about, like, I also use powers with the same powers I use at work, I use with my kids, like to manage them. So I could kind of see it both ways. Expert power. So these stores, they solely rely on me training the manager and the manager training their team. So they need me a lot more than I need them, I guess you could say. And then I think about like role model, like the referent power. There's a lot of people that I know within the company that, I've known worked with Starbucks for 14 years. So I've taken on a lot of different store managers and even the district managers that do the other side of the business. I do ride-alongs, and I kind of become their role model. So, and then information power, that one was huge because, like, again, I go into these environments where the person that runs the actual Target doesn't know anything about Starbucks. So they really do like need my information, but I always have to control what I can share and what I can't share. And I don't share from one business to the other. So like if there's a Target and then a grocery store down the street, I can't share what one store does in sales. So I thought it was interesting because once I went and read through all these powers, I'm like, probably use them all over the place.
Yeah.
That's it.
What do you guys think is like the one that you found most effective? Is there one that have found is most effective?
I kind of lean towards that's a good question, by the way. I kind of lean towards the referent power. I think that's the one that's most built off of loyalty and built off of like the relationship. And so while I would say expert power is probably the second best, but I especially like referent power because when you're telling when you're asking someone to do something or you're telling someone to do something and they are totally all for it because they you have a good relationship with them, I feel like that's the leadership style that I think feels the best. Like, it's not like coercive or even reward where it feels like it's a transaction, but it's like a mutual kind of collaboration almost.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, so I was just gonna say. So I think the referent power is the one that I think is the best and the most enduring because it's kind of built off of loyalty.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, that just seems like it's easier to sustain versus like reward power. Mm-hmm. Just because, I mean, yeah, in the book it said you have to replenish it and you gotta like keep that relationship going. But at the same time, it's not going to be like super expensive for the company to do that. You can just do little things like, oh, hey, you did a great job, or write someone a little letter when they did something great. Just little things like that can help to build on that relationship. with my job, I think that they do use referent power, but as like a short-term motivational thing, they do management uses reward power quite a bit. They'll have like for the end of the month, like when stats are gonna close and everything, and you gotta get everything done, they'll have like little competitions, like KTVs, like a whole bunch of crazy prizes just for like that last little push for the end of the month. So I think that in combination with referent power is really effective for me as a follower anyway.
I think the hardest one to use after I looked at all these is the ecological power. I've used that, and I use that for like new store openings, renovations, and store closures, and it's really how the work gets done. It's probably the hardest, kind of like the hardest tool to pull together, because it's not something that I guess you would think is natural, and it takes a lot of thought and planning. I mean, if I had to say which one out of these I use the most, it's probably expert power, but the one that I have to use every probably 3 to 6 months, and it's probably the most painful one, is that ecological power. And it's kind of interesting when I read about it. It's controlling how the work gets done. And you're in charge of that. So when there's a mistake that happens, you don't look like the expert anymore.
So
it kind of can take your power.
So it's kind of like controlling the process on how to
like
go about the work.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So I think there's a second part. The discussion says discuss ways in which cultural difference may influence the way we interact with leaders and employ power. And that was like from chapter 10. So what do you guys think about that? Anybody?
I thought it was super interesting. I told you guys I did a study abroad course, and it says, I think it's on page 335, it says the most effective way to develop cultural intelligence. So the cultural intelligence is what I really like is through a long-term overseas experience, like a semester abroad or an overseas job assignment. However, if those options aren't available, enrolling in a cross-cultural communication international business course, participating in cross-cultural simulation, or taking an education service business trip. I thought that was really interesting because it is hard to learn about culture when you're in your same environment.
And you haven't thought about like what makes up your culture because it's just what you're used to.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because I have a totally different view of things just by doing that small abroad trip.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to like foster diversity in a company or group even is just to know about the different cultures that you're interacting with. And that can be hard, if we're always in our same environment every day, and also like even just like within our jobs, we're just interacting with the same people all the time and in the same area. So you don't really get a whole bunch of exposure. One of the things that my company does is we have cultural diversity groups and clubs that you can join. So they'll have like they have like a Hispanic heritage, they have East Asian Pacific, they have African American, they have working women. So there's all of these little clubs that you can join, and like every couple of months or something they'll have something around the cafeteria. It just has like little tables where you can learn about everything and then join. And so I think things like that within a corporation that actually proactively try to educate people and get people involved can help to foster diversity within the company also.
Great. Where do you work, Hannah?
Discover.
Oh,
Hannah. Sorry, Hannah sounds like Anna.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
The one that I was thinking about, and this is something I took, I think a couple of you guys are taking this class now, but last semester I took the intercultural business communication class. And ever since I took that class, I keep thinking the one thing that stuck with me that I keep thinking about even through Christmas break and everything was high context versus low context, because that was super interesting to me, like how some people in different cultures, they will like a big bulk of their communication is actually being transmitted through the context that they're in. And so like, and their behavior is just it's like playing in line with this context. Whereas I think America's rather low context, and so most of our meaning is transmitted through the actual words that we say. And so I think especially when dealing with groups, the way that we communicate in such a way, we might assume that other people are low context. And there was several examples in the textbook from last semester where how a difference in high context or low context can really cause frustration in business settings, and I can imagine will be the same in group settings as well. So that's the one that I think is just really, really interesting, and one that I had never thought of prior to last semester.
So yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it is super interesting that like between cultures, but something I've also noticed is just like people that are like from the United States, like everybody's communicating differently. And if somebody, and I mean, it also goes off your personal preference too, how you communicate. So if someone prefers more of a low context communication and they're talking to someone who is more high context, they could be like, oh, why did you do that? If they were, if they weren't looking them in the eye or texting on their phone during like hanging out or something, like that could be like really insulting to somebody. So I think even just like having that on just like a smaller scale, I guess, is something that could even affect business or friendships now, even without, interacting with other cultures directly. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what that cultural intelligence piece was saying. It's so important to know like your audience, your customer, because you can avoid making mistakes just by having the ability to do your job in an effective way so you're not insulting anyone. I think it's interesting because a lot of people look at me and they look at my name and they assume right away I'm Hispanic because my first name's Anna Maria, but it's actually German, and I'm a firstborn. I'm firstborn on my mom's side in the U.S. And a lot of people think, oh, she looks like a white girl and she must be. But yeah, my dad, his family's from Serbia, and my mom's family was from Germany. So I'm completely European. But a lot of people just assume, I guess you could say we're all equal. And it's kind of interesting because I grew up with my mom having a huge language barrier. So for me, I really learned how to like kind of read cues if someone can't understand or they're having a language issue. And that's really helped me in my current role because a lot of times I deal with people that English is their second language.
All right, so we're at 16 minutes now. So was there anything else anyone wanted to add?
No. I think we're good.
All right, cool. All right, I'll end this.